Welcome, everyone, to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove, and we want to wish everybody, well, I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as we charge full force into 2024 here. So just want to remind everybody before we bring our guest on that if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can find us at From the Shadows podcast. You can find our forum page at After the Shadows. You can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author or From the Shadows Podcast Instagram page. You can also just go to our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com, and hit the contact button and send me an email if you have an experience or anything that you just want to share with me. Even a good recipe. I'll take a good recipe if you want to share that too. And then if you really want extra content, you can't get enough of just the regular From the Shadows podcast. You can find us on Patreon at From the Shadows Podcast and sign up to get our episodes early, commercial free, and there's some extra content on there. We'd love to have you hang out over there too. So with that being said, I'm going to bring on a guest who was highly recommended from a previous guest. If anybody, our loyal listeners remember Shane Spencer, who had some great Bigfoot stories from Ohio, and he told me I got to get a hold of this guy Robert Swanger. Actually, he said Robert Swinger, but we won't we won't go into any more detail of what Shane Spencer might be talking about. So Robert, welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a couple weeks now.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Appreciate it, Shane.
So I know a little bit more about what what you're going to talk about, but the main thing that Shane said was that you were into some Bigfoot research, and maybe you do some Bigfoot research with him, or how did you guys' worlds collide, so to speak?
Sure. Well, I've been doing the paranormal research for a number of years now, and one of my partners, my good partner Jim, he and I decided we wanted to do more with Bigfoot. It's honestly stuff that we've always been much more interested in, even than the paranormal. So we started just trying to reach it out and making contacts, and we ended up getting in touch with Dave Wickham. We met him at a Bigfoot conference, and this would have been January of 2020. And so we got a chance later that year to meet up with him. He introduced us to Shane, and yeah, just the whole relationship from there just kind of blossomed.
So you have a paranormal background then. That's the thing you started out in. And now did you get bored with the paranormal, or did you just think, there's more to what we're investigating, and you kind of wanted to see what else was out there?
Well, I wouldn't say I got bored with it, but I wanted to, I really always wanted to do more of the Bigfoot stuff. And I'd done some Bigfoot research on my own, in the past. Nothing as extravagant as what some people have done, but once Jim and I made up our minds we were going to do that, and meeting up with Dave and meeting up with Shane, really got into it a whole lot more, and doing more expeditions out in the forest, checking out the sightings, areas of sightings. So yeah, it's been great. It's always been a topic that I've been interested in ever since I was a kid, much more so than any of the other mysteries that always captured my attention. Probably because that one just seemed like it was the most plausible.
So that of everything, see, gosh, when we get into this, I can't wait to see what I don't want to ask the question yet. I'll wait because I got it written down here. I want to see. But so let's talk about the Bigfoot stuff then first. How has this worked out? I mean, so you've gone out, you've done some research, you've gone out and done some, I don't want to call them expeditions, but that's kind of what, done some investigations, so to speak.
Yeah.
What have you, have you experienced some stuff yourself? What what are your thoughts about what's going on here in Ohio, especially?
Sure. Well, to answer your one question, yes, I've definitely had some experiences, multiple experiences. I think anyone who goes out there and spends any amount of time probably has at least a couple. Um, I like to take a skeptical approach to the research, so I'm not just every time I hear a piece of wood break or hear something fall in the woods, I don't just automatically assume it's Bigfoot. But I've definitely had some experiences that were very hard to explain. I think I'll share my very first experience ever really was I grew up in Darke County, Ohio, and I actually lived on the Darke Preble County line, so
Okay.
the county line road. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I was probably about 13, and we're in the country. It was all farming country out there. And I remember, we didn't have air conditioning in the house. So in the summer, you slept with the windows open, and I had a dog that always slept with me. We woke up in the middle of the night, and this dog was in the window. The bed was pushed up against the wall under the window, and the dog was in the window, just whimpering and whining and crying. I'm like, what in the world's going on? And I thought, neighbor's dog is in the yard or something, and she's getting upset. And I'm out there looking, trying to see if I see anything. And all of a sudden, I noticed that there's this long, drawn out kind of a moaning sound, and I didn't know what to describe it as. And I could just listen to it and listen to it, and it just kept going on and on. And at first, I thought, well, it's got to be the farmer's one of his dairy cows, Like, well, that ain't no dairy cow, and plus the sound sounds like it's coming from too far away to be one of the, from the dairy farm. So, I probably listened to this for 20 minutes, I'm guessing, until I finally just I just got to get back to sleep, and the dog settled down, and that was it. Well, years later, it was on the BFRO website, and they had the recording of the Ohio Howl from 1994. I know everyone's familiar with that one. And when I listened to that howl, I got chills because it was the exact same noise that I had heard in my youth that night in the summer with that dog. So that was probably my first experience.
Wow, that's good. And probably be glad that you didn't realize at 13 what it was you were hearing out there,
Right, it might have scarred me for life.
And I can imagine. I mean, I grew up out in the country too. This, similar. No air conditioning, the windows open, and noises that are miles away do sound, close. And I think if it's hard to describe to people when you do grow up out in the country and there is nobody around,
Oh, yeah.
Like my nearest neighbor was half mile down the road, and there's two people on the same stone road, stone road. I did say that right. I grew up on a stone road.
Okay.
So I understand that. Like I'm right there with you that as a kid, that would just, be amazing to hear, and especially not know what it was for sure. So
yeah. And this was, again, I was 13, maybe around that time, give or take. And so you're figuring this is probably around 1984. This is easily 10 years before Matt Moneymaker made that Ohio Howl recording, and then completely opposite sides of the state, because where I grew up is more considered Southwest Ohio. So, but when I heard that on the internet, years later, I immediately recognized it for what it was. And since then, I've heard that one more time. I was backpacking with a good buddy of mine, Dan, years ago at the Zaleski State Forest, and I woke up in the middle of the night, heard some barred owls, was sitting and listening to them, and then all of a sudden, way off into even further away than when I was a kid, I heard that same howl again, and I woke him up to listen to it, and he was a big skeptic, and even he was like, "Wow, that's creepy," and had no explanation for it.
Now, where is this Zelensky's? Where's that at? Where's that park?
Zaleski State Forest is near Lake Hope. So it's kind of southwest of Nelsonville. So you got Wayne National Forest and Hocking Hills area.
Okay.
So
All
it's
right.
near there.
Okay. So that's like the southeastern part of the state,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Right.
more southeast. Yep.
Okay. And so did you, so then as you got older and you heard the Ohio Howl and you realized maybe what you heard could have been the same, could have been the same thing. Did you start doing some research like around where you grew up, just even like researching reports to see if there was?
Well, so I actually started, it's funny, I hadn't thought about this in a while, but I actually started doing my own investigation when I was, before I even had a driver's license. So here's the story. I used to get all the books out of the public and school library, anything I can get my hands on. And reading through one of those books, there was a sighting report that in Ohio that they said was either, that what was interesting, they said it was either Dark or Preble County. They didn't specify which. And I thought, well, wait a minute, I live on Dark Preble County Line Road. So if I gave my address to somebody, how would they know which side of the road I lived on? And so if they were putting this report in their book, they would put Dark or Preble County. So I started riding my bicycle all up and down the road, meeting neighbors I'd never met before, asking them if they ever had seen or witnessed anything. And surprisingly, a couple of them had. So yeah, that's my earliest investigation, like 14, 15 years old.
And so now you never ran into the person who was in the book?
No. It turns out that the road, there's actually two sections of that road, and I lived on the one that was further east, and there was another section further west, and yeah, I never even saw that section of the road until long after I got my driver's license. Never had a reason to go down there, so I never knew about it.
Isn't that amazing? Like this, you didn't even know growing up, you didn't even realize that your road was just over a little bit,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, kids are oblivious. I mean, I don't know how many times I've, when my kids were younger, they're like, well, which way does your bus go? I don't know. I'm talking to my friends, looking at my phone. I don't pay attention to which way the bus goes. All right. Well, I'm sure I was the same way.
I know. I remember my kids growing up and going, okay, well, what's your friend? What's their last name? I don't know. What are you talking about? You don't know their last name. You go to school with them. You've gone to school with them for like 4 years. You know what their last name is. So
yeah.
So yeah. So you actually were an early Bigfoot researcher in Southwest Ohio.
Yeah, I was searching for Bigfoot before searching for Bigfoot was cool.
So you hear the Ohio Howl, and then you guys get hooked up with Shane and those guys. What then? What happens now as an adult? As an old timer, and how then did your paranormal experiences and your training as far as investigating, how did you take that into the Bigfoot field with you?
Well, the beauty of the two is they're really very related. Essentially, you're looking for things that are out of place, something that doesn't seem normal or consistent. Even the types of equipment you might use will be very much the same. So really, it was an easy transition in that respect. Again, I take a very skeptical approach. So just in paranormal research, you have three types of investigators. You have the scientists, which are, they're trying to look for that physical evidence. You have the sensitives. Those are the people who, have, maybe they're more prone to personal experiences. They'll go into a house and they'll say, I can sense something in the room, that kind of thing. And then you have the skeptics. And I've always taken kind of a cross between the scientific and skeptical. Always, whenever somebody brought up something, it was always, okay, well, that's probably this. That's we can explain that away. What do you got that I can't explain away? It's kind of like the old Sherlock Holmes approach, right? if you remove all the possibilities, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's a good way to approach it. I mean, um, like I said, there's all kinds of ways to approach it, but when it boils right down to it, it's what is it not, and eliminate the most obvious things.
Right.
So you start going out and doing some Bigfoot research. Where are you guys going, and what are you experiencing?
Well, typically we're focused around the Coshocton County area. We've been to Salt Fork, the Woodbury Wildlife Area. There's an area they call the AEP land. Shane can tell you more about that because he's local to the area. But yeah, just trying to find any of those remote areas where we might run into something. A lot, obviously, like any of this, it's some of it's dumb luck. Just being at the right place at the right time. I mean, if you think about Roger Patterson and his film that he made with Bob Gimlin, I mean, what dumb luck that you just happen to come up on that thing and fall off your horse, get your camera out, take video of it.
It's somewhere Stacy Brown, my good friend Stacy Brown's listening to this, and he's like, "It's not real. How that's what." Sorry, Stacy, I just had to throw that in there for you. But yeah, you're right. It does and the more stories I hear and people I talk to, it sounds almost like unless you are, like you said, stumble upon one of these creatures where they have absolutely no expectation of you being, you're not going to see one unless it wants you to see it, unless it's trying to prove a point.
Right. Well, and you look at it like this, to put a military perspective on it is, if you're out there in the woods, you're looking around, and say enemy combatants, you're on a scouting mission, recon mission, whatever it is, you're under cover and concealment and you're hiding. And the people who are oblivious to everything going on are the people who are moving around. So if there's going to be contact, the person who's in concealment gets to decide if or when that happens. So,
good point.
Again, it's only dumb luck if you're just walking around and bump into the thing.
So tell me about some of your dumb luck then out there.
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually go back a little bit. This would have been around 2001. It was before I met my wife. So I was back to Preble County again. So there had been a lot of reports in that area back in the early 80s. But, and you kind of look at that stuff and you think, well, the first couple of them might have been legit, and you wonder how much of that is people jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, yeah, I saw something too, because they like the attention. But there was a couple of very interesting reports. This would have been south of Eaton, Ohio. There was a road. It's closed now. It's been closed for decades, but there was a bridge called Roberts Bridge. I don't know why I remember that, but it's that bridge is actually in the fairgrounds now. So they picked it up and moved it into the fairgrounds.
Oh, okay.
So there was a story back in the 80s. So again, this road is completely closed off, non-existent. And the story was that a couple boys walking their dog, saw something that chased them for a little bit, and they were petrified, right? So fast forward 2001, I decided to go check this out. I mapped it out, and I drove my truck, and I pulled off the adjacent road, and the old road is still there. It's just overgrown, and there's cornfield on both sides. So I walked to the tree line, and I'm by myself, and when I get just inside the tree line on the road, the only thing that's left is all these, the big giant mound of concrete, broken up concrete. So I'm assuming from when they pulled the bridge, they had busted up all this concrete and it has left it there in a big pile. Well, it's wide, it's huge, and I'm trying to figure out how to get around it. And finally, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna climb over it. I guess there's, just be careful, don't get hurt. And I start to climb over it, and one of the pieces of concrete tumbles a little bit, makes some loud noise. And as soon as it does, I hear something make one big splash and then two smaller splashes from the creek. And immediately in my mind, and again, I want to be careful here because, I'm going in there checking out a Bigfoot report from decades prior. So I've already got Bigfoot on the brain. But what it sounded like to me, it literally sounded like something jumped into the water with 2 feet and then took 2 steps. So it was like a splash, splash, splash. So I just freeze and I'm like listening. Is there going to be any more movement? I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be a deer. It's got to be something, right? And I can't see anything. I don't know what's below me. What's on the other side of this mountain. I don't know how far the water is. I don't know anything. It's like August. Everything's overgrown. And so I just, keep looking. I keep looking. I keep listening. And eventually, after a little bit, I start to hear some really deep, heavy breathing. I mean, like heavy breathing. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'7". I'm well over 300 pounds. And that's all you're getting out of me on that one. But yeah, but this was heavier breathing than I'm capable of. And I could just hear it, just breathing in and out, like nervously, like something. So basically it was almost whatever it was like a Mexican standoff, It's waiting to see what I'm going to do. I'm waiting to see what it's going to do. And at this point, I just kind of felt a fear come over me. And I decided I don't want to be here. And I literally backed up out of that, away from that mound of busted up concrete, out of the tree line. And I continued to back up for probably another 30 yards before I finally was willing to turn my back to the trees. And I did not get a sense of calm until I actually got in my truck and closed the door. And then I just sat there waiting to see if something was going to jump out of the woods. And again, I'm by myself. I'm not armed. So it could have been anything, but it was definitely a weird situation, weird experience.
I just want to point out to all the listeners. I'm a big dude too. You're a little bit bigger than me. Okay. And for somebody your size to be scared of something they can't see says a lot, because I'll just say it, like, it does make you a little bit braver if you can look around and see that you're bigger than everybody else.
Oh, definitely.
And so to imagine a guy of your size and you're not even seeing what's out there and you're feeling fear. I can only imagine, because at first I'm like, you're saying, you hit these rocks, and I'm like, well, maybe there were rocks that fell in the water, and that's because, maybe it was the concrete. And then when you said the breathing, then that's like, okay, well, concrete doesn't breathe. So.
Right. And I can tell you that, it was one rock, one piece of concrete that rolled, and it rolled towards me. Later, I did get a chance to go back, and I went with some friends, and we kind of explored the area a little bit more. And what I did find was where the pile of concrete is, it's probably another 25 feet till you get to the edge of where the bridge used to be, to where you can actually see down. And then from there, it's about 12 feet down to the water level. I'm guessing, it's a little bit estimate here, but it's about 12 feet down. And so, I didn't see any evidence of anything, but it kind of put a little bit more in perspective. It's like, okay, well, it made me wonder, okay, well, whatever this thing was, how tall was it that I could hear it all the way from back here through the trees and all the brush? So I don't know. I'll never know the answer to that one.
Wow. Well, look, I don't know, man. That's why I don't go out there looking for this stuff because of that very and there was no part of you that thought, man, I just got to get a closer look. I can hear it. I know it's right over there. There was no part of you that was kind of like, come on, just take a look.
Oh, I would say there was a part of me that felt that way until I heard the breathing. But I was trying to be careful because I didn't want to make more noise and end up scaring off whatever it was. I was afraid, oh, okay, I'm going to scare this thing off and then I'll never get to see it. So I was trying to figure out how I was going to get over the concrete until I heard the breathing. And then it just like, all bets were off at that point. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm out of here.
Oh, man. So now you went back with friends. Now, have you gone back anymore? Because I mean, that seems like a place that would be worth really going and investigating.
I mean, yes and no, but not since that time. I did speak with a lady that lives right there in the area, and there's also like a private gun club right there, and she had shared with me that they had some experiences in that same area, and that they had even found in the snow, they had found tracks, big,
Wow.
human-looking footprints in the snow. 15. I'm guessing what she said now. It's been so long, but but bigger than normal. I mean, I wear a size 16, and my foot is 12 inches in length, from the heel to toe. So, bigger than what she said was bigger than what my feet are. And there was also another reported sighting on an adjacent road right near there. That creek right there is called 7 Mile Creek. There was another sighting around that same time with those kids, where a mother and daughter were driving on an adjacent road, and the daughter saw something in running up the side of the hill. The mom almost missed it, but she was driving. She's not looking. She's watching the road, and that was one that was investigated by a guy at the time. And I spoke with that guy. I wish I could remember his name now, but he was a well-known investigator in the area. But yeah, he lives down in Cincinnati area. I can't remember his name now.
So it sounds like that where Dark and Preble County come together is a really good hop. And then here's the thing: is we always think of Eastern Ohio, like where you guys are talking about, where you're researching now or going out, as where all the activity is. But I think that's just because nobody pays attention to the western side, because there does seem to be a lot of activity from Indiana over there into Ohio.
Sure. Well, and if you look at the topography, I mean, mostly, like Preble County, we're talking due west of Dayton, Ohio. To Eaton and Dayton are both on US 35. They're both right just south of I-70. So when you get to that topography, like almost all of Darke County is pretty much flat. Once you get into Preble County, across the county line, it starts to get really hilly and stuff. And like a perfect example, on the north end of Dayton, if you're north of Dayton, that topography, you can drill for a well and have well water in your house. Once you get south of Dayton, you can't. Everything's different there. Again, I'm not a geology expert, but I know the topography is totally different. You start to get hilly, it gets rocky. People have to have cisterns rather than wells.
So your dumb luck prevailed, and you escaped.
Right.
You escaped to see another day. So that didn't deter you. I mean, I gotta be honest. No. Before you even get into the paranormal, that right there would have to be scarier than any incident of going into a haunted house or the prison or anywhere looking for.
Oh, I agree.
Looking for ghosts. Holy smoke! So
now, I remember, on that note, I remember when I first met Amy Boo, she had said, "Oh, you do paranormal? There's no way I can do that. That's too scary." And I replied, "What are you talking about? A ghost isn't going to rip both of your arms off and beat you to death with them."
Oh, and Amy Boo's pretty fearless, so I think she'd do just fine.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
On a ghost hunt. So, absolutely. Okay, so that didn't scare you off from looking for going Bigfoot hunting. So what has happened since then?
Well, as far as incidents, so we had that night that when I first met Shane and Dave. So the first thing that happened, I got to back up a couple days. So leading up to that night, this was early August. I was still on summer break for my job, and it was a Saturday. I thought we're going to meet on Tuesday. It's Saturday. I'm bored. You know what? I'm just going to drive out there and I'm going to explore and get a lay of the land. So I did. I was just by myself. I drove all the way out there. I live north of Columbus, north of Delaware, Ohio, and so I drove out there. It's almost an hour and a half, and I'm just driving around these back roads, following GPS, following maps, and just seeing what's what. And I've been doing this for a while. At one point, I stopped. I pulled over in my vehicle, and I get out. Not to be gross, but I had to relieve myself. So there was this gate, and I went behind this gate, behind this tree, and I relieved myself. Made a quick video, and it was funny. I don't make videos. I'm not big on that. But knowing that my Jim and other partner Brian were going to meet us there, I'm going to make a quick video saying, "Hey, here I am. This place looks awesome. Can't wait to see you guys on Tuesday. Let's check you out later." So I made a quick video, got back in the car, and I just kept driving. Eventually, I went home. Well, on Tuesday, I meet Jim, and Brian couldn't come out, but I met Jim, and we're just driving around, and I get to that same place. He's following me, where I had parked and I had relieved myself. And right where my vehicle had been parked, there was a tree had fallen over. I mean, like if my car had still been there, it would have crushed the top of my car. And I'm like, what in the world? So I pull over, he pulls over, and I tell him, dude, this is where I made that video. That tree was not there, 3-4 days ago. So we check it out, and it's broke off pretty high. Later, we showed it to Dave Wickham, and he measured it. He had a tape measure, and he said it was broken off right at 10 feet. And none of us could find any damage to the tree, like from woodpeckers or from disease or insects or anything that would have made it weak. It wasn't a huge tree, but it was, I would say it was maybe 10 inches in diameter, maybe a little, give or take. And it was just funny that it was right there. And I always wondered did something get upset because I quote unquote marked its territory.
It's exactly what I thought when you said that. Like, I'll show you. You're not going to get a chance to come back here and do that again.
Yeah, and maybe in some primitive logic, it thought if I knock the tree over there, where it can't park his car there again. Talking about me, of course. I don't know. I mean, but we could find no reasonable explanation why that tree fallen. And I even, once I got home, I even went so far as to look at the weather, and all the weather was mild for those days. There was no rain, there was no heavy winds of any kind, and again, it was the only tree that fell. And it fell, and if it had been a wind gust, it fell in the completely opposite direction of where a wind gust would have taken it.
Did you go back and really dissect that video and see if maybe something was there watching that you didn't catch?
I did, and I did not see anything. But according to Dave, and he knows that area as good as anybody, he said that hill above where that tree was, he claims that there's where they have what he calls watchers, that they would be checking on who's coming in and out of the area, and keeping their tribe or their whatever you want to call them, their group, safe from intruders.
That's not creepy at all, right? I mean,
no, not at all.
And again, like I said, okay, we're talking about, and I don't want to beat it over the head about you being a big dude, okay? But most people out there aren't 6'7", 300 plus pounds, okay, walking around. And if you're one of these creatures and normally you tower over everybody that's out there,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they did see like, oh boy, this dude might be able to come up and you know, be a
They
threat
might see me.
physically.
Yeah, that's what they see me as a real threat.
Yeah,
So
I mean, they
I hope
could.
not.
Well, but I mean, I mean, let's face it. If you went out there with Shaq, you know,
Oh yeah.
Bigfoot's gonna look at Shaq and probably say, "Ooh, that's a big dude," you know. And it's gotta make them pause. Like, okay, that's not the normal, 5'10" guy out here.
I just
And
hope they don't have the. I just hope they don't have the that bar fight mentality. Always take out the biggest guy first.
well, as being the biggest guy, you can always take the smallest guy and throw it towards the trouble and
Right.
give them something to give them something to mess with. So okay, so then you go back to so that now you're back investigating in the same area. Does something
Yeah.
happen?
So that same night, so we find that tree fall. Dave takes us to an area where there's a pond and it's an old camping area. He just sets us up for the night, and we end up getting along really well. And, of course he's feeling us out and stuff. And I totally understand. Unfortunately there's some strange people in this community, but, but that night, now my friend Jim, he builds a cosplay, like suits of armor for Star Wars cosplay. So he goes all the, conventions and stuff, and it's really big into. Well, for something to attract attention, he brought a pair of lightsabers, right? They're like the
Okay.
toys, but they're like the real nice high end stuff, right? You can actually fight with them and everything. And we're just kind of playing with them a little bit, and we're sitting in our chairs in front of our vehicles, and it's super still night. I mean, it is so still. Like I remember on the pond, you could just see the I want to call it steam. It's not steam, but the condensation lifting the fog lifting off of the pond and just sitting there. It wasn't even moving. There was like no wind whatsoever, and you could see the clouds rolling past. It was almost a full moon, but that was like it. There was nothing else. And then I want to say, if I remember, I want to say it was like 11:45 at night or something like that. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just hear just cracking, and it gets louder and louder, and all of a sudden realize that's a tree fall. A tree just fell in the woods while we're sitting here, just on the other side of that pond, on the other side of a small ridge. And we're both like, what the world was that? And, of course, we're thinking, well, did we get something's attention? Of course, I'm trying to explain away. I'm thinking, okay, every tree is going to fall eventually. There's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Squirrel jumped on the tree. It was all it took, right? And that could be true, but it was just really weird that, everything else that had happened that day, plus we're out there with lightsabers, and I don't know, the whole mood kind of changed after that. But we didn't detect anything else. That night, eventually left, went home, but definitely it was a little unsettling. I don't know how else to describe it. I definitely got that same kind of feeling I had before when I heard that splashing in the creek and the breathing. I kind of like, yeah, I feel like something doesn't want me here, and maybe I should go.
And you realize the lightsaber really didn't work, and it was going to be useless. It's going to be useless.
Right. Damn it! This is only a real lightsaber.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can imagine that'd be unnerving hearing that stuff because every time I hear, and this is another thing, every time I hear a story about somebody being out there in a tree falling, I've been out in the woods a ton of times, and I've never heard a tree just fall on a regular day.
Yeah.
Like maybe on a really super windy day, I've heard trees crack and fall. I mean, we're in our family's campground area with tree, and I've never heard a tree just fall or sound like it got pushed over. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
I'm
that one
just
that night was crazy. It was like, and I hate to do the sound effects, but it was just like a, and It's like, it was obvious what it was, but it was like, how did that happen when there's no wind? Like I said, the fog was coming off of the pond and just hovering there. It wasn't moving at all. I mean, there was no wind movement at all, at least not at ground level. So
and see, there's the other thing is and you're in the same area and a tree's already fallen where you were 3 or 4 days before, along the side of the road. And now here's one across the pond in the middle of the night. And like I said, okay. I mean, I don't think that just happens all the time.
Sure.
So,
well, and a lot of people, there's a hypothesis. I want to be careful. I don't call it a theory, but a hypothesis that if these creatures do exist, they may use infrasound, like tigers and some other animals, where they'll low guttural, very low frequency, that you feel it more than you hear it, and it can upset you. And I had an experience that years before this is after my wife and I were married, but it was my friend Dan, he and I went to backpack in Shawnee State Forest. So this is southern part of Ohio, like south central Ohio, just west of Portsmouth. So you got the Shawnee Forest there. It's a huge area, and they got nice backpacking trails. And they have a setup where they have potable water available at these individual campsites. And so we'd been hiking. We camped at night, and there was a big storm came through. Next day, we hiked some more, and we ended up on a road. And eventually, we're like, we're just going to cheat, because we're getting a little older, and it's not as much fun. All that hiking when you get a little older. So we ended up hitching a ride in the back of a truck to the parking lot, took his car, and we parked off the side of the road next to the trail from the road back to this campsite. It was campsite number 7. I remember that. And it was, or no, I'm sorry. I think it was campsite number, no, it was 7. It was 7. So anyway, it's already dark. We set up camp, and it had been one of those, like, it wasn't raining, but it was just like everything was wet from rain. It's like a little misting all day long. It was just kind of miserable, but trying to start a fire. And out of nowhere, on the other side of a ridge behind our tent, there was a tree fall. Again, there's no wind. There's just this little bit of rain, this very fine, misty rain falling. Now, Dan kind of freaks out on me. And I'm like, come on, man. Trees fall all the time. I wouldn't think anything of it. He's like, I don't know, man. I don't like it. I don't like it. And again, he's a big skeptic, right? But he immediately gets upset. And eventually, I start getting a little upset, just a little nervous. Like, yeah, maybe you're onto something. Maybe we shouldn't be here. So we pack up, and this is where it gets weird. Okay, so the tree falls bad enough, but we're hiking our way. It's about a mile back to the car, and we're just following the path, go past the potable water, and get to the vehicle. Again, it's parked in a ditch on the side of the road. Very rural area, obviously. And I remember I just kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for something to be there. And again, could this just be instinct, letting your imagination get the best of you? Sure, absolutely. But I kept thinking, once we get to the car, I'll feel okay. Well, we got to the car, we're loading up, and I still didn't feel okay. So I thought to myself, okay, once we get in the car, I'll feel okay. And I remembered the previous incident where once I got inside my truck, I felt okay. I got inside the car. He gets inside the car. We close the doors. I still don't feel okay. I'm still just crazy nervous that something is going to happen. I'm just waiting for something to jump out. And so I think to myself, okay, well, as soon as we get moving, I'll feel okay. We get moving. I don't feel okay. And we just drive for miles and miles. It's probably, just to get out of the forest area, it was probably 20 miles, probably about 40 minutes worth of driving. I'm guessing here a little bit. Again, my memory isn't the best on those kind of details, but I remember that he and I were just both stone quiet the whole time, and all we did was drive. And it wasn't until we got out of the forested area into what would have been farmland that finally it felt like it subsided. That insecurity, that fear finally went away. And then we talked about it, and he ended up experiencing the exact same thing I was experiencing. and vice versa.
Wow, that's okay. And so now you don't know that that's like an effect of infrasound or anything, but you don't have a real explanation as to why both of you would feel the same thing, right? I mean, it's got to be
Yeah.
some. I mean,
Maybe like a mass hysteria kind of thing. Again, trying to be logical about it. And,
yeah,
he got upset, he got me upset, and, and both got a little nervous and scared. But again, I would think once you're in the car, at the very least, once you're in the car, you got the windows up, car doors closed and locked. At that point, you should feel fine, right? But we didn't. Neither of us.
it's almost like the woods or the trees themselves had something going on that that until you got clear of them, like you said, out
Sure.
into open country, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. And the other thing I thought about too is, and again, this is a stretch, and I admit that right up front. But what if these things were doing that infrasound, and others were picking up on it, and they were repeating it, and these things were basically repeating all this infrasound as we were driving out, and then once we were out of the area, then we were either too far away or they stopped. I don't know, but I don't know. Like, again, that's a stretch. But.
Well, look, it's not. I mean, it's something I can imagine. I can imagine it. Like the first creature says, "I got to get these guys out of here," and it worked. And lets his buddy know down the road, "Hey, let's get these guys out of here for whatever reason. Maybe you guys were close to discovering something or finding something or whatever." And it's just like, okay, let's everybody. It's a tag team. Get them out of here. Make them feel uncomfortable until they're too far away, sort of deal.
Right.
I can certainly imagine that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then going back. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, it's like I said, when you're talking about something like that, you have to consider everything as a possibility because you don't know. There's a reason. There's a reason that you guys felt that way and both felt it at the same time. But what is it? I think anything is worth examining for sure.
Yeah, and in the going back to the paranormal research, this is what we would refer to as a personal experience. So nobody else experienced it. We did. So like I've been places where I felt something touch me that wasn't there. Nobody else felt that. So and all I have is my word that something happened. Something touched my arm, and nobody else had that happen. So that falls under personal experience as opposed to hard evidence like you capture an EVP, vocalization, or a footprint or something like that.
Well, you say so. You say that how the similar things, the paranormal and Bigfoot, how many similarities there are to them, but just like you saying that, like you got touched by a ghost, by something that wasn't there. Essentially out in the woods, you're getting affected by something that may or may not be there. If you don't see it, how can you say for sure the actual physical thing is there? But there's not a ghost physically like us standing there beside you, but it somehow was able to manipulate time and space and whatever to make you feel its presence, and and I can see that is a similar stream of that connects those kind of feel, researching ghosts and researching Bigfoot is you got to be open to that because you can't explain everything, but you also know that something's going on for sure.
Yeah. And the one thing I definitely try to avoid doing though, is I don't like trying to explain one mystery with another mystery. I'm not one that is subscribed, and I respect people and their beliefs, and they've seen something. I don't want to discredit anyone. I don't want to be insulting anyone, but I find it very difficult to subscribe to Bigfoot came out through alien UFOs or portals or they're interdimensional. You start getting into that kind of stuff, and it just, in my opinion, it just takes you down a path where there's no out. You just get deeper and deeper into it, and there's no way you can ever get out of it. And the one nice thing about Bigfoot is, assuming that they are a flesh and bone creature, unlike the paranormal, someday somebody's probably going to prove it that they exist. That's one thing. Going into a paranormal research, you have to accept that you're never going to come home with the solid proof. You might have some evidence, but you'll never have proof. With Bigfoot, you may one day come home with proof.
Now, there's some people with haunted dolls and haunted furniture that might dispute the fact that you can't come home with solid proof.
That's true. That is very true.
Shane Spencer's trying to take all the credit for all your Bigfoot experiences, talking to me. It sounds to me like you've had a bunch of very solid experiences, but without him. Like, you don't even need Shane Spencer.
Well, it's Shane. No, I love Shane. He's great. Shane and I, we're not only Bigfoot buddies, but we also we do a lot of ATV riding together too. So
there you go.
Yeah, no, Shane's the best. He's good man.
So let's go back.
I said that.
I won't. Let's go back. So you have the experience then with the tree getting knocked over across the pond. What are some of the other things that happened from that time over in that area that you guys are researching?
So I would say for myself, probably the best experience was about a year and a half ago. We were Shane and Jim and myself were looking for a place to investigate. We went one place with a bunch of ATV riders going around. They got the side by side, and they're all blasting loud music, and you can they're drinking and smoking and stuff. I was like, well, we want someplace quiet, right? So I suggested we go down this one road. It dead ends at a gate, and past the gate, you have to have a permit to get in there. You can walk, but you can't drive past the gate. That's what I mean to say. And there's a small pond there, and we decided just to set up there. I was like, look, nobody's going to be riding their ATVs down this way because it's a dead end road. So we go, and it's almost a mile from the highway. And we park, and we did a little walking around and checked some things out. But basically, it was kind of dead for the night, right? Nothing going on. And in my mind, I had just subscribed to the idea that nothing was going to happen, which happens a lot. How many times you go out and just nothing happens? The same with the paranormal. Even these big places like the Reformatory in Mansfield, sometimes you go out, nothing happens. So we're sitting there, and we've been just kind of BSing and having a good time, and to set the stage for you, Jim's truck and Shane's truck are both parked side by side, both facing south. I'm on the bed of Jim's truck. Shane's on the bed of his truck on the tailgate, and Jim is sitting in a chair. Well, this happens about 1:15 in the morning. Out of nowhere, there's a wood knock to our east, like due east. And it's hard to say for certain, but I would say maybe somewhere between 30, 35 yards away. And of course, we're like, whoa, what was that? We're waiting and listening. Suddenly, Shane jumps off the back of his truck with a yelp. And we're like, what's wrong? He's like, I heard something. Well, now, neither Jim or I heard it, but I trust Shane. He said he heard what sounded like something let out a big sigh. And that sound wasn't coming from the east, it was coming from the south. And he said he just felt it sounded like just something like let out a big, heavy sigh. And I remember him telling me specifically, I remember his words. He said, it scared me where it made me feel like I just want to get in my truck and go home. But he admitted that he fought his reflexes, his fear, and settled down. Well, only a few moments after that, we hear a second wood knock. This one's coming from the south, about the same distance. Like, okay, that's weird. And maybe 5 to 10 seconds later, there's a third wood knock. This one's coming from our west, where, just on the other side of this pond. And at this point, I remember thinking to myself, we're surrounded. Because these knocks they all occurred within a minute of each other. And finally, maybe no more than 10 seconds from that one, the first knock to the east repeated itself. And we could hear something moving in the east. There's a small little stream. I don't even call it a creek. It's just a little stream that empties into one of those slurries, those slurry ponds. And we could hear something moving in there. And whatever it was moving away from us. It was heading further east to get away from us. And and we were, of course, at this point, we're kind of like scrambling. We don't have our lights. We don't have our recorders on. We don't have, because we all were kind of just, at this point, never figured anything was going to happen. We're just sitting around, shooting the breeze, as it were. And the weird thing, though, that I noticed was after the third knock, the one that was to our west, there were 2 frogs in that pond that started going back and forth at each other vocally. And, everybody knows what a typical bullfrog sounds like. They're usually casual. They're like, ribbit, here I am, ladies, ribbit. They're just chilling on the lily pad, hoping to get lucky, right? And then if you've ever heard one of them get attacked by like a snake or something, they'll squeal. They almost sound like a baby. They're like, wee, wee, wee. This was something, it was a ribbit, but it was an agitated ribbit. It was something in between. It was more like a ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. There's something here. Ribbit, ribbit. Everybody be cautious. Ribbit, ribbit. That like it was a warning to others. And the other one was repeating back to it. And they were just like they were going back and forth communicating with each other. And they kept this up for probably maybe as long as a minute or so or less, maybe, after all the rustling ended. So whatever was moving to our east and going away from us, once it ended and we couldn't hear that anymore, the frogs stopped shortly thereafter. The frogs were so weird, though, that at one point I even questioned if they were actually frogs or if they were something mimicking frogs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we go down to, so now we're, let's get down to the investigative part of it, right? Okay, so Shane heard something, felt animals breathe, all in, maybe he heard, maybe it was a deer, maybe it let out a weird snort or something, that, and he was already on high alert and he heard that and it just startled him. There was something moving through the trees, through the brush, around by that little stream, going away from us. I mean, that could be deer, could have been beaver, it could have been, raccoons, who knows? Could have been anything, right? I mean, it sounded bigger, but it's hard to tell. Everything sounds big in the middle of the night in the woods. The frogs, again, I've never heard frogs do that before, but I'm no zoologist. And, for all I know, maybe that's just something frogs do from time to time. No way of knowing for certain. But what I really find hard to explain are the knocks. Because they were just so solid, so just clear. And I can't think of any natural animal that would do that. So unless there was someone playing an extremely elaborate hoax on us, I don't know what else to say it was. But even that's almost very improbable, because you got to figure at least 3 guys had to crawl in, get into position, and then signal each other one at a time. And then the first one repeat himself, and then all sneak back out with none of us seeing them, hearing them. And if you're going to play the prank, I mean, go big or go home, right? So,
a couple knocks isn't going to be worth the trouble.
Yeah, exactly. You want to keep going until you get these guys so scared they want to leave, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we stayed out there for another hour and a half, and or almost an hour and a half. I think we left around 2:30, and nothing. absolutely nothing the rest of the night. That was it. There was and the whole thing altogether didn't last more than 2 minutes, all in all, minute and a half maybe. But it was a minute and a half of a lot of action, and then it was done and over with. I mean, the last thing that lasted longer than that was those frogs.
So as you described it to me, I'm thinking of the scene, and it's almost like they were hunting. Maybe the three of them were hunting and meeting at a point, trying to drive something through the woods, and the first one sees you guys and knocks and says, "Hey, hold up," and that was their way of maybe stopping each other and saying, "Don't go any further. There's some people there," and I don't know that. I mean, because like you said, there's nothing else in the woods that if I go out in the woods and there's a bunch of animals that hear me knock on a tree, they're taking off. Oh, yeah. They're not hanging out and then like the squirrels picking up a branch and knocking back at me. They're all taking off. So unless it's like you said, people out there messing with you, then what is it? Knocking on trees.
Right. I mean, again, this is all very speculative on my part, but what it made me think of was that my feeling about it, again, it's just a feeling. It's all speculation. I have no way of knowing, never will. But I almost feel like there might have been like a family unit coming south along that stream. And we're just there talking, doing our thing. We're not trying to be silent, nothing like that. And they kind of snuck up on us, and then they probably sensed, or maybe through some form of communication that we didn't detect, that there were others there. Maybe we were already being watched, that we didn't even know it. And so they let out a wood knock. The others reply. He's like, okay, gives out that last wood knock, thanks for the heads up, and then they go a different direction to avoid it. I don't know.
Oh boy, that's even just gives me the willies to think that you're out there and you just have no idea what's just hanging out watching.
Yeah, exactly. I will say that the wood knocks were interesting though, because they were very consistent. Like all four of them sounded almost identical. I mean, it was really hard to tell them apart. And of course, I'm so mad at myself that I didn't have a audio recorder going at the time. But I'd shut it off, thinking, nothing's gonna happen, and didn't want to waste my battery, that kind of thing. So how stupid. But this would have been great to play back. Oh my gosh, this would have been an awesome piece of evidence.
Absolutely, yeah.
But those tree knocks, and after talking with a couple other people, I'm of the opinion that they're either clacking stones, or maybe they tend to sound like when you cup your hands and you can make like a popping sound.
Yeah.
I imagine if these animals could know how to cup their hands, and their hands are huge, I'm sure, and be able to make that popping sound, like that. And
so they're not actually hitting something on a tree. It just that's what makes sense to us as humans out there. That would be what would be making the sound. Somebody hitting a tree.
Yeah. Right. Well, here's the thing. I challenge anyone to go out there and at the drop of a hat, find a stick that you can hit against a tree and make a good wood knock. Because you can't. They're all, if you have to break them, if you pick them up off the ground, they're usually so rotted that they just break apart, and you never really get a good thud out of them. And if you cut them off the limb or rip it off a limb, it's so green, it's not going to make a good sound. So there has to be something else. I'm not saying that there's never wood knocks. I'm sure there are from time to time, but I think by and large, they probably have another means of producing that sound, and it would make sense. You've already got your hands on you. So if you can just learn to, to make that cupping sound like that.
Very, very good point. Very good point. I mean, I've been out there trying to, that same thing. You pick up a stick, and usually when I go hit it, it snaps off.
Yeah, exactly.
It snaps off, and it doesn't make a good sound at all. And if you did have to rip it, well, you would hear that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
You would hear that, let alone, not a green piece of wood not making a good, a good sound on the tree. You'd hear the other part.
So,
Jeez.
I will.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the only thing I'd add to that is that we were talking earlier about being scared, and that night I never felt scared, and and all three of us were armed, but I will say that I felt a little unnerved, by the idea of being surrounded. I mean, we heard the first wood knock. It was kind of exciting. Like, oh, then Shane gets scared. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And we hear the next wood knock. I was like, well, wait a minute, there's two of them. And we heard the next wood knock. It's like, and I realized, there's east, south, and west of us. We only got one way out. I was half expecting to hear another one coming from the north. So, but I never really got scared. It was just a little unnerved, feeling like I was at a severe disadvantage, tactically speaking.
I can see how that would be a feeling for sure, for sure.
Right.
So is there other stuff that has happened then, other than that?
Oh, let's think here. Off the top of my head, I mean, we had there was one time it was Shane and Jim. They took off. I was with I stayed back with another guy, Dan, and they said they had felt like something had thrown rocks at them. The Jim had found a footprint at that same area where he and I had that very first tree fall on the other side of that pond. I was waiting on another guy, and I didn't get there in time to explore. But they went back and they found a footprint, and Jim believes he found the tree that was knocked over while he and I were out there with lightsabers. So I don't know.
Now, do you guys keep going out to the same area when you guys go out?
The same general area, yes, but just different specifics of that area.
Okay.
And we did go. I remember when we went to Salt Fork. I remember that night. It was kind of weird. We kept hearing like this thumping noise all through the night when we were out and about. And I remember talking with Dave about it, and we were discussing what that could have been. And I actually think it might have been like if these animals could have been pounding the ground, open palms, like you see gorillas will do at the zoo. They'll pound the grass, and then there's that sound of just echoing all through that forest there at Salt Fork. So that was interesting. I kept, I couldn't imagine anything else making that, anything that's known at least. I could be wrong. Maybe it was some deer rutting or something. I don't know, but it just, that's what it put me in mind of. Something was banging on the ground, and that sound was just echoing all through the forest.
So, oh man, okay. And Shane even mentioned that he wanted to. He's like, man, you got to come out with us. I am not, unless you're out there with him. I'm not going, because I don't want to feel. I got to feel like if you're scared, then I know it's time to go. So
sure. Well, I'll say that my friend Jim, our friend Jim, he is that guy's fearless. To a fault. And he's literally said, look, man, he said, if you get scared, I trust you. He goes, if you say it's time to go, then I'm going to trust you, and it's time to go. He's literally fearless, but like I said, to a fault.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like, do you feel like you need to have like a visual to be satisfied with knowing that they're out there, or are these experiences that you've had so far pretty much tell you what you need to know?
Yeah, I think I still want that visual. I want it from a safe distance. I don't want to just turn the corner and walk into one. That would just be absolutely frightening, but horrifying. But yeah, I definitely want to see one, and I want to know once and for all, for my sake, that they're real. I believe it. I mean, obviously we have friends in this community that I trust wholeheartedly. Shane being one of them, Dave Wickham being one of them. They said they've witnessed stuff, and I absolutely 100% believe them. I don't question it. Now I will, I question it in the point of, is this what you could have seen? I just case in point, Shane had a sighting, and I absolutely believe he saw something. But as a skeptic looking at it, based on his description, and I don't want to take his story away from him, but it was, and I told him to his face, I mean, this isn't just something we've discussed, and he agrees, but I'm more inclined to think he saw a bear. Still a rare sighting in that area, but in my opinion, it was probably a bear. I have to go for the most likely, cause, the most likely explanation. But he believes it was something different. And I was like, hey, that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about it. And I don't know. I wasn't there. So.
Well, that's your skeptical side, that you want to come at it from a different perspective, and before you just go out and throw hey, it's Bigfoot. You want to explore every option, but then that leads us into your paranormal experiences, and
Sure.
how explain, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to hear how you got into that. What made you, head into that direction, and what are some of your best experiences you've had there that lead you to 100% believe that there is something paranormal out there?
Sure. Well, as far as getting into the investigations side of it, I went to one of those public library doohickey things where people speak, and I met the lady there. Her name's Peggy, and a super great lady. I love her. She's awesome. She had an investigative team at the time. It was basically spread out over the entire state of Ohio, and basically I got the chance to join and started going on some investigations. Now, what they were doing was more, and that's how I met Jim. What they were doing was more, people would call up or email and say, hey, I have stuff going on in my house. Can you come check it out? And we did a lot of that at first, and they would offer to do cleansings, burn sage and say prayers and that sort of thing. Eventually, Jim and I kind of stepped away from that. We wanted to do more historic sites. Unfortunately, the problem with going into people's homes is you don't know what you're getting into sometimes. We did, Jim and I and his niece, we did an investigation once where the lady was a widow, and she was just lonely. She just wanted somebody to come to her house, spend time with her.
So there was nothing really going on.
No, everything she claimed to witness or experience, we were able to debunk every single thing. And there was one point we thought we heard something, and we asked her, hey, was that you making noise downstairs? And she said, no, it wasn't me. I don't know what that was. Well, later, his niece, Sarah, she contacted me. She said, oh, yeah, I had a recorder downstairs. It was definitely her.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, well, it was a 2.5 hour drive just to keep her company. I feel for her, don't get me wrong, but it was
well, and
what we signed up for.
It's some of those early investigations. So, I mean, did they legitimately find places that you guys felt they were haunted, or were they
definitely.
a lot of? Definitely. Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. Some of those places were definitely had activity going on. There was one in particular. It was a private residence in Mansfield, where there was two sisters that lived in this house. One of them had their son living there as well. And at one point, that was where I'll just tell you real quick. I got touched. I was standing in the doorway from the living room to the kitchen, and there was another guy in our team, Tom, and Tom came up and, felt, how you come up behind somebody and just touch their arm to let them know you're there, or you're trying to squeeze by or whatever. And, I felt Tom touch my arm. And so instinctively, I just twisted and turned and stepped back to make room for him. And when I looked, though, Tom was on the other end of the room. He was nowhere near me. So I was like, okay, well, somebody touched my arm. And he was the only one that was behind me. And he wasn't even close enough to get near me. So later that evening, the one sister, who was really super sweet all night long, ended up being, I don't want to say possessed, but being heavily influenced by something. She got real nasty, started cussing, which she hadn't done the entire night. I mean, she baked cookies and all this other good stuff. And by the end of the night, she had turned into a completely different person. And then at one point she broke down and was crying, and her sister and one of the team members were trying to console her. It was a little spooky. It's like we were sitting there. I felt back. We were like waiting to see what's going to happen. And finally, at one point, she's like, "Stop staring at me." I'm like, okay, sorry. Hard not to.
So what happens in a case like that then? Like, is that where they come in?
Yeah, well, we were actually at that point. What had happened was we were doing some prayers, and one guy had come up with some anointing oil, and then he'd put it on her and on her forehead or whatever. And then, and am I allowed to curse on your on your podcast here? Okay, there's nothing bad. I mean, just these are minor curse words. I just want to make sure. But she's like. Finally, she gets all agitated, and she's like, "What are you doing? What is that stuff? It smells like shit." And he's like, "Well, it's just oil. It's olive oil. It's been blessed." And she's like, "Well, I want it off of me." And before that, she had been fine. And then she was like, "I know this is wrong, but I feel like I hate all of you right now." It's like, well, that's weird, because earlier you couldn't wait to give us cookies and treats and you were thanking us for being there. But yeah, it was just total shift in her personality. Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be paranormal, but it was definitely weird for sure. She felt like the oil was burning her skin. That was the other thing.
Well, I mean, if she was allergic to olive oil, that would be one thing. But
yeah, maybe.
but it is weird that she kind of knew right from wrong, even by saying, right. I know this is. Like, so she, could even tell that she was being influenced by something and knew it was wrong, Yeah,
it was a strange one for sure.
So was there a resolution to that? Was there?
No, not really. I mean, it was, I think a couple of team members, remember Peggy was there. I think they did a follow-up with her, but I never got the results on that one. So.
Oh, geez.
How was it? They had everything kind of broken up into, how your teams were. You had investigators and team leads. And so I was at the time, a lowly investigator. So, the people who would make contact, the team leads, were the ones who'd get all the good information and catalog it.
So you're just doing all the work?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Everybody was working.
So you guys went off on your own then to do some historical stuff. How did that? I mean, what are some of the experiences you had doing that?
Well, it definitely had been the Reformatory of Mansfield a few times now. We've done we did the Strand Theater in Delaware, Ohio. We did the Palace Theater in Lorain, Ohio. We did Waverly Hills in Louisville, Kentucky, investigation there. So I'm looking at coming up actually sometime maybe in May. There's a place in West Virginia, I don't remember the name of it, that I told them I was interested in getting involved in that investigation. So we'll see if that happens. But some of the definitely some neat experiences. Jim and I, I'm going to say Jim because it was his equipment. He set it up. But he caught there's an entity at Waverly Hills they call the Creeper, and it's like a black shadow. He caught it on film, and it's not digital; it's Super 8 actual film, and he captured that on film. It looks pretty sweet. It's he has it all, but it's yeah, you just see the thing. Looks like it's just crawling down the ceiling, down from the ceiling in front of the camera on the wall, and then goes right back up. It's crazy.
But that wasn't something that you saw or experienced while you were there. It was just caught.
Exactly. We saw it later. I've had lots of EVPs. You know, there was one at the Strand Theater. We had just started our investigation. We were in it's an old theater, so they have both, you know, the movie projector screen, but behind that is a stage, where they do live shows. And so we're behind the projector screen on the stage. And then I just do the introduction, you know, I'll say, oh, you know, here's the date, we're Strand Theater, here's the team members on the investigation. And as soon as I set the recorder down, all of a sudden you can just hear someone say, it's very, very faint, but it's there. It sounds like someone's saying, almost with an accent too, saying, "Get out of the way." Like, okay. But it's 10 seconds into the recordings. Get out of the way.
And that wasn't something that wasn't something you heard at the time.
No, definitely not. Yeah, but it was playing it back. It's like, wow, okay, there's something.
So what's has there been an instance where you were in one of those places and you just felt like, I mean, did you ever feel in one of those places like you did there at that bridge where the bridge was and you heard the breath?
I mean, I've been, you know, maybe a little unsettled in some of those places. I mean, Waverly Hills kind of had that like heavy feeling to it, but I can't say I've ever been scared in any of those places. You know, there's different rooms, like the reformatory in Mansfield. You might go into different areas of the building that have a different feel to them. You know, they just feel like there's something going on. But again, I've never felt scared. I wasn't afraid to go into the room or anything. Just you could just tell there was something just didn't feel right. There was I had an incident. It was I'm trying to remember the name of the place now. It's down in Lancaster. Did an investigation there, and a friend of mine, she was. I went into this little doctor's office. It wasn't even an office; it was like an exam room, and I could just tell it felt really heavy in there compared to the other. When you walk out, it didn't feel that way. You walk in, it was very small, not much bigger than a bedroom. So I said, "Hey, come here, check this out." And she comes in, and immediately she kind of screamed, yelped when she walked in. And I was like, "Well, what's the matter?" She was like, "Nothing." She was like afraid to tell me. And so, but she admitted that, yeah, this room has a really, really heavy feel to it. But later, you know, I pressed her a little bit and I said, you know, what was that about? She said, well, I was afraid to say anything. But when I walked in the room, I felt something, you know, grab me. And it's like, well, there was something there in the door. You sure wasn't? She goes, no, I literally felt something grab her hip, like a hand, like squeezing her hip, not that she bumped into something. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's different.
Yes, that would give you quite a start, you know, to feel like something squeeze your hip. That would, oh boy, that's a little bit different than, you know, grabbing your arm. I think it's a little more personal.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so the as far as experiences, I think probably one of my two best experiences. One of those was at the reformatory. So Jim, myself, and a buddy Brian were in the I keep wanting to call it sick bay, but the infirmary. So we're in the infirmary, and the whole time we're in there doing audio recordings. You know, we're just talking, asking questions. And I kept hearing, sound like someone was throwing pebbles, like someone just throw a pebble, and then someone throw another pebble, and then one came from the other side, and then back to the original spot, just like someone's throwing a pebble. And so at one point, Brian says, "If you want us to leave, give us a sign." And then on cue, it sounded like somebody dropped a brick. So here's where it gets weird. That's weird enough, right?
It gets weird. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So Jim gets up to investigate. He wants to see if he can figure out what fell, right? Of course, doing his due diligence. He steps away. And no sooner does he step away than Brian and I are catty corner across from each other, sitting on benches. Out of the ceiling in front of me comes out this, I don't know what else to call it. I'm just going to call it an orb. I'll describe it. But basically, it was a glowing orb that was long in cylindrical shape, but rounded edges, of course, and very fluid. And it looked like it was fluttering. It made me think of dragonfly wings. And the thing came out of the ceiling, was literally self-illuminating, came down about halfway to the floor, flew across the room and past me in front of Brian, and then went right back up into the ceiling and disappeared. And Brian and I both were like, "Did you see that?" at the same time. And Jim missed it. But this thing was, if I had to guess, I'd say this thing was probably a foot in length. And we were trying to figure out what it could have been. Because, again, we're trying to play the skeptical approach, debunk everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we could not figure out what that would have been. It was flying too slow to be a bird, like a regular, sparrow or something.
And there are birds in the reformatory. Like
absolutely.
If you're in there,
birds and bats
they fly around and stuff. But you're right, flutter around, and it's not like they're hanging out with you in the cell or in the infirmary.
Yeah, and we were trying to find stuff that we could, is there any way to reflect light off of something? And we couldn't find anything. And plus, on top of that, it even looked like, to us, both of us agreed it was self-illuminating. It wasn't super bright or anything, but it was definitely self-illuminated. It was it flew right down in front of us, and that's definitely one that I have no explanation. It definitely wasn't those where you see people take a picture and you get all the dust reflecting the flash of the camera kind of thing. We weren't running cameras; we were just running our audio. But yeah, we both saw it. So
that's no thanks.
Well, that one, you think that's creepy? At the Palace Theater, so Jim, myself, and his niece Sarah were sitting in what's called the presidential suite, and so the stage is to our left, and the back of the auditorium is to our right. And as you look at the back wall, you have the bar. There's an exit door to the alley. There is the wall, and then above that is the projector booth. Below the projector booth is the girls' restroom, and all the way down the other corner is the men's restroom. Well, I kept seeing movement out of the corner of my eye, and I'd look, there's nothing there. Then I'd look away, and then in the corner of my eye, I could see this movement, and what I was seeing was shadows. And I kept thinking, what am I seeing? And I kept thinking, okay, it's car lights. Is there something going on here? Whatever. Well, at one point, and this is where it gets good, I thought I saw a shadow walk out of the women's restroom. And just as I looked at it, I hear Sarah go, "Huh," just very casually, right? And I turned to her and I said, "What'd you see?" She goes, "I saw something come out of the women's restroom." Like, oh shit, there we go. There's my confirmation.
So what did? I mean, but it just looked like a shadow figure.
Just a black shadow figure, but they were all over that back wall, as long as you weren't looking directly at them.
Is the weirdest thing? That is now. Did you guys have cameras or anything and try to capture?
We had cameras up the whole time. We were never able to capture anything like that. Yeah, it's so hard to get evidence, and even then, you got to have the camera set up in the right place at the right time. It's that dumb luck again.
Wow.
There was one. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, shadow figures. They always I've heard, the full body apparitions, and a lot of them almost seem like they are residual haunts. Like you're seeing like a imprint,
a memory.
But shadow figures always, every time they're ever caught on film or anybody, always seem like they have an intelligence to them. Like, yeah, we're here, but we don't want you to, we don't want you to really see us.
Yeah.
And it gives me the willies. Like if you're looking, like to me, if you look, they know you're looking and they're stopping. That's almost, like they just know.
Yeah. Well, one quick thing that happened there too was at that Palace Theater in Lorraine was the. Are you familiar with what a ghost light is?
Yeah.
So they had a ghost light, just a lamp on the stage. For those who don't, in your audience who don't know, it's just a lamp on the stage. It's basically a nightlight, right? Well, Jim had went out and he said he unplugged it because he said, well, we want to dim as many of the lights as possible. Well, he literally unplugged it, stepped off the stage, walked back to the back of the theater, back towards the restrooms and stuff. And all of a sudden, they had the lights on the walls above the presidential suites, just a little behind them. And they started to come up very, very slowly, very, very dimly. And they started lighting up the stage. Well, the owners had given us an iPad, and the iPad had control of all the lights on it. So I'm like, okay, well, I thought to myself, that's kind of silly. Why would you unplug the light and then turn those lights on? So Jim comes back. He says, hey, what are those lights doing on? I said, I don't know. I thought you guys did it. He said, well, no, I didn't do it. So he went to find one of our team members who had the iPad, and they went all over that iPad and could not figure out where the lights were for those specific lights. They eventually found the back of the soundboard, and they had turned themselves on. Nobody had been back there. So as soon as he unplugged the stage lamp, the ghost lamp on the stage, those lights, it was weird. They came up so slow. It was really like it took seconds for them to come up to brightness. And when they stopped getting brighter, I was still expecting them to continue to get brighter and brighter. And what's really weird, they came up to a brightness that was almost matched what the lamp on the stage had done. So the stage really wasn't any more lit up with those lights than it was with the ghost lamp.
So it was almost like something was like, look, we like this light. We like this.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, how dare you turn it off?
Right. I mean, it's funny, but it's like, what the heck? So we turned them off, and they stayed off the rest of the night. But we had no explanation. Nobody. There was only 6 of us on the team. And again, they weren't part of the iPad, so it wasn't like he accidentally hit them or something. And none of us were messing with the soundboard. There was no reason to. But then we went back and looked, and that's where they happened to find them. So. Yeah.
So don't go to the theater in Lorraine. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're telling me?
You might enjoy it.
No, I would not. I would not enjoy it. I would not enjoy knowing that there's people in the back wall hanging out, or that there's somebody that wants a little bit of extra lighting and up on the stage. I would not enjoy that at all. Oh my God. Well, Robert, I'm glad, despite Shane Spencer's questionable characteristics, and I'm just kidding. I'm glad he recommended you to come on and share some of your experiences.
Thank you very much. If we had time, I had a full body apparition experience too, years before I ever got into investigation.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Let's hear it. We got to hear it. We can't not.
All right.
Let's hear it.
I don't want to run you over on your time, but
what's over?
So,
we're the network. We take care. We're the ones that decide.
Okay. Well, a little background. This would have been around 1992, 1993. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. I was living in base housing. I was married to my first wife. We had a townhouse, and nothing weird ever happening. The townhouse wasn't even that old at the time. That it had been built in the mid to late '80s, so it wasn't even that old of a building. Well, it was a Saturday afternoon. I'm upstairs taking a shower, and again at 6'7", I'm tall enough that I could see over the shower door, right, without even trying. And it was just the two of us. We didn't have kids or anything. And so she's downstairs. I'm just taking a shower, this nice warm shower, and all of a sudden I see some movement out of the left corner of my eye. And I turned in my head and looked, and by the time I got focused on it, what I saw was a woman walking past the bathroom door in the hallway. So it was like an actual person standing there. And I remember that she had her hair up in a bun in the back of her head. She was wearing a long dress and what I think was an apron. It looked like period clothing, like Little House on the Prairie kind of clothing. She was solid, like complete, like a real person standing there, with the exception of she had no color. Everything about her was shades of gray. So everything in the room had color and contrast, and she was shades of gray. And she never looked my way. She never acknowledged me. She just walked past the door, out of my line of sight, and disappeared. And my reaction was shock. I remember that I literally just froze in place. Holy crap, I just can't believe I just saw this. And I had goosebumps all over. I was in a hot shower. I had goosebumps all over. The only way I know to describe it, it felt like somebody poured cold water down my spine. It just went through me. And half of me wanted to see it again because I was like, I want to confirm what I just saw. It was such a fleeting glimpse. And the other half of me was like, I don't want anything to do with it. I eventually got out of the shower. Of course, I looked. There was nothing there. I went downstairs. I asked my now ex-wife. They say, hey, were you upstairs while I was in the shower? She goes, no. I said, I'm being dead serious. Were you upstairs at any time while I was in the shower? She's like, no, I was down here the whole time. Why? What's up? And then I just explained what happened. But yeah, no idea. And you talk about like the imprints of the memories with some of that stuff. I thought about that, but I'm like, well, what are the odds that there was a house exactly where this townhouse is that happened to have the floors at the exact same level that this entity would have walked past that bathroom door at the same height? I don't know. And that was my full-bodied apparition.
Oh, no big deal. Just a full body. but the reason though that you can also maybe think that is probably a residual haunting is if it was intelligent and you're saying it looked like it was from a different time period, you wouldn't have any idea, from what you described, what an indoor shower might be, and wouldn't it be surprised, because sometimes I feel like hauntings maybe maybe it is another dimension, another timeline that we're rubbing up against, and we're seeing in them and they're seeing in ours. And wouldn't they just be just as shocked to see a 6'7" dude peeking over a shower
right.
as you would be to see them? So when they don't react the same way as we do towards them, it's almost to me like the shadow figures. They obviously knew you guys were in there. They obviously were, I don't want to say obvious, but I've heard enough stories and seen enough things to think that they knew you guys were in the theater and they were purposefully staying just out of sight as best they could, and something like that, though, it's almost like she was oblivious that you were even there, didn't even care, and so I don't know. That's just my take on it. But the fact that you thought somebody else might be in the house and it wasn't your wife is certainly enough to scare you, no matter what.
Definitely, yeah. It was quite the experience. I've never felt anything like that before or since. That sensation, it was something else.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the only way I know to describe it. It was just goosebumps, and like I said, my spine, just right down my spine, just went ice cold.
And again, that's just dumb luck. You just happened to be. You weren't like doing an investigation. That same thing may happen every day at some point in time, and you just were never there to see it. You know.
Yeah, that could be. Maybe it happened every Saturday afternoon, and I just wasn't there all the other times it happened.
Oh, wow.
Who knows?
Great. Now I'm afraid to get off here and open the door out of the office into the hallway. That's why I keep it closed.
Careful while you're taking a shower.
That's why I keep it closed. Oh man!
Shut while you're in the shower.
Hey, well, this is a great way to kick off the new year. These are some great stories, and I don't know if the full body apparition in the shower is going to get beat. I don't know if that's going to get beat for a while. For a while, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing, and I hope you get an opportunity to see a Bigfoot out there with Shane and those guys. I think that'd be awesome.
I certainly hope so. And thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, anytime, and if you do have a sighting out there, I definitely want to hear about it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out. God!